Guys, today I thought I would go over 5 potential breakout players for Ohio State in 2022. Obviously, a very critical year for Ohio State. Our expectations are to win the national title this year. Probably the preseason AP number 2 team behind Alabama. But who are 5 guys that could help Ohio State finally get back and win a national title? First, a few honorable mentions. Number 1, Julian Fleming. So the reason Julian's not going to be on my list is simply due to the injury concerns. A lot of people don't remember just how highly Julian was actually rated. This is the former number 3 overall player in his class, the number 1 overall receiver. We hope and we pray that Julian Fleming is healthy, because he could be a major asset to this offense. He's an honorable mention. Also, Jordan Hancock, the cornerback. He's a guy that I loved as a recruit. Really athletic, lengthy, long. He could be the second cornerback opposite Denzel Burke. I know Cam Brown returned, but maybe he's more of a slot guy. Either way, I really like Jordan Hancock going into his second year with the program. He didn't play very much last year as a true freshman. Those are 2 honorable mentions, but let's get into my top 5. Coming in at number 5, it's going to be Steele Chambers, and we need a linebacker to desperately step up on this defense. We understand that CJ Hicks is a generational talent, but it's a lot to ask a true freshman. So Steele Chambers, he's a guy that really flashed, especially later in the year. Last year, finished with 27 total tackles, 1 sack, a forced fumble, and an interception. The hope is he can break out. Maybe Tommy Eichenberg can also break out and then get CJ Hicks some early playing time. It's going to be tough to get him playing time in week 1 as a true freshman, but if he's good enough, hopefully by later in the regular season, CJ Hicks is seeing the field with Steele Chambers and Tommy Eichenberg. That's what I hope to see out of the Ohio State linebackers. They need to be much improved, and Steele Chambers, a guy who flashed when he finally got playing time last year, he's a guy I could really see breaking out for the Buckeyes, leading the team in tackles. We will see. He comes in at number 5 on my list. Coming in at number 4, it's going to be Amaka Abuka, who I'm sure we're all familiar with, the former number 1 overall receiver, the former 5-star in the class of 2021 from Washington. And guys, it's this year, Ameka's sophomore year, I think it's going to be more about his return ability than his receiver ability. I still think he's a great receiver, and he's going to totally break out as a junior when JSN goes off to the NFL. But this year, Amaka Abuka is probably the best kickoff return man Ohio State has had since Ted Ginn Jr. Maybe you can make an argument for Jalen Marshall. Jalen Marshall was underrated, but Amaka Abuka averaged like 29 yards per kickoff return. He's going to get Ohio State great field position. You're going to see a lot of teams having to kick it out of the end zone because Amaka is such a good kickoff returner. A lot of people kind of overlook late in the season, Amaka was constantly getting the Buckeyes starting at their own 33, their own 38-yard line. That's an asset people overlook. And also as a receiver, what more needs to be said about Amaka? It's going to be a little bit tougher because you still have JSN, who's going to command a really high target share, obviously. So as a receiver, and also Marvin Harrison Jr., things like that. But Amaka, as a kickoff returner, is going to be a significant asset on this team. We know he's the former number 1 overall receiver in his class, a former 5-star. He's an absolute stud. Watch out for him in the return game. Ohio State has struggled so much in recent year to get any sort of value. The last time I think they've had a kickoff return for a touchdown, maybe it was over a decade ago. I know everyone talks about that stat. It's so crazy. A bold prediction, I think Amaka gets one this year. I really do. I think he gets a kickoff return for a touchdown. So he comes in at number 4 on my breakout players. Coming in at number 3, this is someone I think we finally got. A big, hulking defensive tackle, Leake Williams, who flashed significantly as a true freshman last year. When is the last time Ohio State's had a big stud run stuffer? Maybe Cameron Hayward. It's been a while. We've had good players, but they're more second or third round type picks. This kid has talent to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. His stats as a true freshman defensive tackle, 5 sacks in limited playing time. You know, a lot of people were saying he should have gotten more playing time. It's just tough when you're a true freshman. The coaches don't trust you, but this kid needs to be one of the starting defensive tackles. It's not even a question. He's an absolute stud. 1 forced fumble in that spare playing time, but Leake Williams, Ohio State, it finally looks like we got a stud, big, mauling defensive tackle who can also generate pass rush. I mean, 5 sacks. 5 sacks is good for any big defensive tackle just in general. This guy had 5 sacks in extremely limited playing time. I really like Williams as a breakout candidate with more playing time as a true sophomore. He comes in at number 3 on my list. Moving down to number 2. These ones should be fairly obvious for most of us. Marvin Harrison Jr., of course, the son of the NFL great. Unbelievable Rose Bowl. He can be the perfect complement to JSN. He's a taller, more lengthy type receiver. He can go up and get it great near the red zone. I could see him easily catching 12 or 13 touchdown passes this year. I mean, when Olave and Garrett Wilson didn't play in the Rose Bowl, he caught 3 touchdowns. Those were the first 3 touchdowns of his career, obviously with him being a true freshman last year. But Marvin Harrison Jr., Ohio State really hasn't had one of these bigger type superstar receivers. Marvin Harrison Jr. is a completely different player than Olave, then Wilson, then JSN. He's going to complement JSN perfectly. Ohio State's going to average like 50 points a game. I could very easily see Marvin Harrison Jr. at least getting double-digit touchdowns this year. Again, this one is relatively obvious. I mean, you know, we saw Garrett Wilson and Olave sit out in the last game of the regular season. He has 3 touchdowns, and obviously Garrett Wilson and Olave are off to the NFL, so he's going to slide right in, but you have to include him on this list. He's going to be unbelievable. Marvin Harrison Jr. comes in at number 2, and then coming in at number 1, the biggest breakout player. This is my man crush. It's JT Tuimoloau, or JTT for short. Oh my God, this is the former... Well, I think he ended up being the number 3 overall player, but 247 Sports had him as the number 1 overall player in the country. He had a crazy recruitment. Actually, I think he committed to Ohio State a little over a year ago on the 4th of July after National Signing Day. As a true freshman, he contributed greatly. With a very solid true freshman season, especially for another guy with limited playing time. This dude is an absolute superstar. This dude has Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year written all over him, in my opinion. And another guy, obviously, Jack Sawyer as well. Those 2 guys are going to be big, but JTT is the guy. When I saw, he just generates so much pressure. His pressure rate is elite. And he's just going to get more playing time. He's going to get better. He's going to be one of the elite pass rushers in the nation as a true sophomore, in my opinion. JTT, the former number 1 overall player. And guys, we know how important getting pressure is. JTT, Jack Sawyer, Leake Williams, the linebacker play. It looks like it's going to be improved. You bring in CJ Hicks. You've got Eichenberg, who had 17 tackles in the Rose Bowl. You've got Steele Chambers. The cornerbacks, you get Denzel Burke back as a true sophomore after an amazing freshman season. You also get Cam Brown back, who's decent. And then we've got J.K. Johnson and then Jordan Hancock as potential 2 other cornerbacks. Josh Proctor. Guys, I'm worried about Josh Proctor. The problem with Josh, he's just got to learn technique. He keeps getting injured because he's just throwing himself trying to tackle people. If he learns technique, he can be a really good safety. I'll be honest with you guys. One guy I think Ohio State fans overrate is Ronnie Hickman. I just don't. Ronnie Hickman makes a lot of kind of useless tackles, in my opinion. We need enforcers. Ronnie Hickman's a guy, he'll make tackles, but I'm just not really a big fan of Ronnie Hickman personally. But hopefully Josh Proctor, is able to stay healthy at the safety position. The bottom line is this defense should be vastly improved. Not only with Jim Knowles, but just They signed a ridiculous class in 2021, and it's tough for true freshmen to make an impact. But now all these kids are sophomores, so even if Jim Knowles wasn't a very good coach, which I think he is, the Ohio State's defense would get significantly better just because the young kids who are extremely talented are actually old enough to make a legitimate impact on the field. So guys, my top 5 most biggest breakout players, once again, number 5, it's Steele Chambers. Number 4, Amaka Abuka. Number 3, Leake Williams. Number 2, Marvin Harrison Jr. And number 1, JT Tuimoloau, JTT. Those are my top 5 breakout players for 2022 for the Buckeyes, guys. That's going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.